Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest, Cyndi Dale. And she's here today to share with us her new book, Energy Healing for Trauma, Stress, and Chronic Illness. Uncover and transform the subtle energies that are causing your greatest hardships. Can you imagine yourself free from trauma and chronic health challenges? Cyndi Dale is going to share with us how to do just that. Now, Cyndi is an international renowned author, speaker, intuitive energy healer, professor of energy medicine, and author of 27 books about energy medicine, intuition, and spirituality. She has worked with over 70,000 clients and presented hundreds of seminars and workshops across the world. So let's welcome to the show, Cyndi Dale.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I've met you before, so it's a reunion.
Oh my goodness. It's always fun to have these talks with you and to share your books. And I was so excited to hear about this book. I have to ask you, what inspired you to write this book?
You know, it wasn't the pandemic, but there is an interesting spin with the pandemic. I have worked with clients almost 30 years, and nearly every client, when they're unpacking their issues, ends up talking about some kind of trauma. Trauma is just stress that won't go away. It just stays stuck in the body and it impacts you. So Llewellyn was terrific in that a few years ago, I sold them on the idea of doing a book totally devoted to trauma and the long-term effects of it. So I wrote it, I turned it in, and I got the proofs back April while we were in lockdown. And I was like, oh my gosh, can we sneak in? You hardly sneak in 12 pages about the pandemic, but I was able to do that. So I just think there was some sort of wind of the spirit guiding me, guiding Llewellyn, guiding everybody who was part of this project to make sure that we could talk about the virus and all kinds of issues that are facing us these days, as well as the bigger issues about trauma and stress.
Well, it's interesting with the pandemic going on right now, and so many people, either isolating themselves or choosing to isolate themselves. We're kind of faced with ourselves, and a lot of times people are having a tough time. I hear, anxiety, depression, stress is on the rise. So I couldn't imagine a better time for this book than now.
There really isn't. And we already had a lot of mental health challenges and emotional challenges. And some of what those lead to is also on the rise: autoimmune disorders, addictions, allergies, chronic pain, chronic illness, all pretty depressing to actually talk about. But here we are. And I love that you pointed out, look how timely this is, because when you look in the mirror, there you are. So in whatever way we're still cocooning, or facing these deeper seated questions about safety and illness and, how we make decisions when the world is frightened and there's stuff that's really scary, it is a perfect time for a book like this, because I don't want to just depress people and make them go, oh, woe is me. I want them to feel empowered, like there's ways to help themselves from the inside to the out and the outside to the in.
Okay, so you start your book off with chapter 1. Here we go. All challenges are energy challenges. And I found that very interesting. I'd love for you to explain to our listeners what that's all about.
Well, it's rather Einsteinian, actually. He wasn't actually the one who said the phrase, everything's made out of energy, but everybody would agree that he would agree. So everything's made out of energy. So it's almost not that intelligent of a statement, because if everything's made out of energy, which is just information that moves, that means that everything that challenges us or creates problems is also made out of energy. And Marianne, it's just that there's two types of energy. And these are just broad demarcations. There's physical energy, which is sort of the stuff of physical objects and that we think of as real and solid. It's not real and solid. That was me knocking on wood there. But most energy is subtle. It's the stuff we typically think of as invisible or psychic or quantum. And so the deeper meaning of what I said in that book, all challenges are, energetic challenges are, honestly, most of them are subtle challenges. They're the stuff that we don't know how to measure, which makes it hard to decipher.
Well, and it's interesting because if you look at the root cause, then it seems that if everything is an energy challenge, then there's a way to unravel that and to work with that.
Exactly. So you're looking for the causal, which also means that there could be, gosh knows how many, maybe 100 different symptoms that are all sort of woven together like a tapestry. And underneath all 100 so-called problems, maybe there's really one root cause. So it's like my mom, when we had to garden when I was growing up. I hated gardening. I still hate gardening, to be honest. I know a lot of people find it very soothing. I do not, because I spent 3 to 5 hours a day every summer gardening. And I was the kind of kid who just wanted to pull the weeds up, right? Not by the roots, just sort of, because that takes a lot more work. And sometimes you have to dig your fingers in there and they get wet and sloppy and dirty. But my mother was always, the weeds are going to come back unless you pull them up by the roots. So it's kind of the same idea working with your issues. If you pull them up by the roots, guess what? Maybe they're not going to grow back again.
Well, isn't that a good thing, right? So if you're able then to really attack disease, maybe it could be things from like disease, maybe depression, whatever, from the roots, then you're really kind of tackling the whole problem.
You are. And sometimes they really are our issues. And I know that's sort of like an odd thing to say, but, let's say I went through something when I was 5 years old, and I actually did. I remember being this kid who always brought in for show and tell the very same doll who was bald and missing an arm, but that was my very favorite show and tell. And we lived in Huntsville, Alabama, and I had a bit of a northern accent. Then later I had a southern one. So I got teased, and they always teased me because I brought in this doll. So there were other issues that sort of crept in about that age, but I began to be scared of sharing with people what's important to me. I just sort of held back and didn't show them what I really liked or what I really thought. And a lot of it goes down to that experience in Huntsville, Alabama, that set of experiences. So sometimes we can really find the cause of a disorder or a depressive tendency or an illness or, just something that's not working for us in what we went through. But sometimes there's other sources. I mean, maybe we took on somebody else's energies. And our real issue is we think we're supposed to caretake other people's energies or take on other people's illnesses or take on certain other feelings, which makes it a little harder to sleuth into the causes. If it's not in our memory banks and it's in somebody else's, it can be more challenging to dig down and get the weed out.
So when you did your research for this book, I mean, because as we kind of start diving into, what some of the traumas are and what some of the causes are, how were you able to differentiate, what caused what?
So I have kind of a system I go through when I'm working with myself or another. What is, I think, really important and imperative in this book is I talk in the beginning a lot about biology. Like when we go through stress, what happens in the body, what happens to our emotions and the biology of our emotions. What occurs when a stressor isn't dealt with, and how does that turn into trauma? What sort of organic systems does that impact, and how does that affect our thoughts as we move forward? So I want to make sure people understand that we're not only going to talk about, subtle energies or the invisible stuff, but also the very real reactions in the system, in the body, in the organs, etc. And when somebody's going to try to get to what's causing, kind of what's upending them, maybe creating real emotional dilemmas or relationship problems or addictions or funny thoughts or not very funny thoughts or poverty, or they get sick all the time or whatever it is. I actually want them to first just really feel their body and accept that they're in a body. And then typically the next step I like to ask them to go through is to ask to be released from any energies that are not their own. And they can visualize a white light. They can pray to the one they believe in. They can ask their guides. They can work with their higher self. Whatever it is that you connect to, that is your place of solace and belovedness, I always start there because you can't heal issues that are not your own. So you want those out of you.
Well, that sounds like a good place to start. In your book, you talk about a lot of different types of traumas, and I'd love for you to share what some of those could be.
Yeah, because when I talk about trauma, again, it's just stress that goes bad, right? And stress is delivered, many different ways. So we can be subjected to stress that's environmental. And so we have forces from the environment, like a tsunami or a big storm or something like that impacts us. A source of stressors can be physical, like you get hit or you fall, or you get in an accident. A stressor can be psychological. It can be emotional. It can be verbal. Maybe somebody's yelling at you or did yell at you, or they subjected you to really mean emotions or something of that nature. I think the force behind a stressor these days can also be digital. I mean, sometimes I get those emails, I'm sure we all do, that are like, wow, that hurts. Or I remember when I did a show a couple of years ago on Gaia, and I looked at the comments and I was so excited. And there were these two people arguing about the tonality of my voice and how they didn't like my voice. And I'm like, wow, that really hurts. That's sort of digital. That's digital and verbal abuse at the same time, because you are who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's also spiritual forces, and I think of those as entities or deceased beings. And there's also a really interesting category I work with. It's hard to explain, but so important to understand. Sometimes there's missing forces. Subject and point. I'm a baby. I'm supposed to be hugged by my mom. I'm supposed to be given unconditional love. And what does she do every time I cry but pop a bottle in my mouth? So I'm not getting unconditional love. What I'm getting instead is milk. So you know what's going to happen is I'm going to start associating love with milk. So 40 years later, I'm craving ice cream or dairy, but I also know that that's not really what I need. So maybe I develop a reaction to it, like an allergy to it. So those are the main categories I like to work with. And it makes me excited to be able to help people narrow in the cause of a stressor. Did it start in the environment? Was there a fire in the home? Or did you get hit? Or did you watch dad hit mom or mom hit dad? Or was it verbal or digital or this or that? Because once you start to part the veils and figure out where something started, you're well on your way to figuring out what it is that's bothering you.
And that is so important because, the thing is that we're responsible for our own well-being and happiness, and we have to be our best advocate. In doing that, taking responsibility for how we experience the world and the trauma that we bring around with us, it's probably a good idea to start looking at that and going, okay, how can I start chipping away at this today?
Exactly. We're not responsible for other people's actions, but we do get to an age where we're responsible for our own reactions. And it's sort of hard to blame people anyway. Yes, people are accountable for what they did, but But if you just focus on them did this and they did that and he and she and this and that, I'm sure you see this with people all the time, that leads to what's so hard to work on is those sort of victim and entitlement issues. Like you start to believe you're just a victim and then you don't have any power to do something in your life, or because you got hurt, you're entitled. And you know what? Nobody's walking around. Johnny Appleseed ain't walking around handing out apples. You have to get yourself to the store or plant your own tree these days.
When we talk about energies, and we've talked about healing energies and what they kind of look at, is it easy for people to go, okay, I have like anxiety and stress. Is that just related to COVID, or is that related to something else? How do they discern that?
Well, isn't that the $1 million question, right?
I know, really, right? I put you on the spot there with that one.
because everybody has some anxiety because of COVID. Of course we do. It's worldwide. It's a pandemic. We don't know who to believe anymore. It's confusing. For many of us, we don't know if we've had it, if we do have it, if we're going to get it. If we did have it, could we get it again? I mean, it's just sort of mass uncertainty and panic. And I believe it's a real illness. It's a real disease. I actually had it quite a few months ago, to be honest.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. And for me, it wasn't as bad as people said. The symptoms weren't described. So I just woke up one day. I'd been traveling a ton for my son's college baseball. And I was like, I am sick and this is not normal. That's all I knew. I was like, this is not the flu. This is not a cold. But because I didn't put a label on it, and I think it's good to get tested and put a label on things too, but I didn't put a label on it. So I was sort of naive and I was like, well, I just want to get rid of it. I got to work. I'm sorry. And so I pretty much cleared it out within a day. My son, who was on the baseball traveling team, he got sick for a week, and we have antibodies and this and that. But, it's scary because it's real. But then you've got to ask, okay, so I need to deal with the fear about COVID. That's true. Or losing my job because of it, or whatever's going on because of it. But then we have to go, is this Memorex or not? And am I triggering an old trauma? And that's making my current fear bigger. And just to complicate it, we can then ask, is the old trauma triggering my own? This life, I believe in past lives or past life, or is it my ancestors? Because we carry our ancestors' memories for 14 generations around our genes. Then we can also ask, or am I just absorbing everybody else's panic? And so we have all these sources. We have our own fear. We have ancestors' fears. We have our own traumas, and then we have other people's issues we could be triggering. So the first thing, again, I like just going really digitally or logically and go, whatever's not mine, I want to release. If this is, an old trauma, I want to know that I'm in touch with it. I want to intuitively get a sense of it and work on it. If it's ancestors, I want to know that, and I can send them healing. Then we can finally sit here and go, okay, I'm scared of what's going on, but now that's a healthy fear. And it's much easier to take action when we're in the moment about a current fear than we have all these other things triggering us.
Well, I'm so glad that you touched on the ancestral piece, because a lot of times people don't even consider that, as that could be even something that could happen. So bringing that up, I think will raise the awareness of people who are going, okay, well, I haven't come in contact with any of these things. I don't know why this is happening. Could it be this?
Exactly. When we first went into lockdown, I, of course, joined the TP parade. I just kept looking for toilet paper everywhere. Yeah, and you sort of get panicked because there isn't anything, to buy.
Yeah.
But then when I started being too concerned that I had X amount of cans of beans or rice or this or that, I stepped back and I said, okay, Cyndi, how much of this is just you're scared because there might be supply chain shortages, and how much of this isn't yours? and is your ancestors, because both my parents were really young during the Depression, and there was a real shortage of food for both of them in their family lives. For my dad, I think they went through 5 years where they hardly had enough food. There wasn't any money. My grandpa couldn't get work. My grandmother had to make the money by taking in laundry, which she did in the kitchen sink. And my dad slept in a cot in the kitchen sink. So more than anything, I was sort of panicked back to their family system, really just spinning down. And as soon as I thought about them and the stories that I knew, I was able to just bless them and contain myself and just say, let's be in the here and now. What's really practical and what's not? What is there to really worry about? And what do you just kind of need to go, it's going to be fine. It helped me a lot to know that a lot of what triggers in us, again, it's 14 generations. Science has proven that really is just what's coded in us. The thought being that if we can draw on sources of strength or power or anxiety or depression, right? If we can draw on what they went through, maybe it'll be easier for us. But sometimes it's not easier because history never repeats itself. We aren't where they were. We aren't kind of going through what they did. We do have trucks and computers and other types of technology too we can rely on now.
Yeah, we have our own complications that go with everything, you know.
New ones.
And so, and they had their complications back in the day. What if somebody doesn't even know? You talk about 14 generations back. Let's say, well, I just know my great grandparents, and it kind of stops there. How do you determine if it's really any kind of factor from any ancestral portion?
Oh, that's a great question. So there's two places in the physical body that we best relate to our ancestors' memories. And one is actually in this chemical soup around our genes. Now, it's not like we're going to go, kind of feel into that, but I'll give you an exercise you can use, where you can sort of talk to your ancestors through that chemical soup. And the second place that we store our ancestors' memories is in the bone marrow. And what's really interesting is actually when we get stressed, everybody thinks that the first hormones that get triggered, like are the adrenals and the cortisol and this and that, is not. There's actually a hormone in the bone marrow called osteocalcin that triggers before anything triggers and goes and tells our adrenals and our brain and every hypothalamus that we're in danger. So these are the places I encourage people to use their intuition, because if you don't have the stories, if you don't have ready, handy ancestry records, which don't exist for a lot of us, take a couple minutes and either relate to like your sternum, like that breastbone, and just imagine that your ancestors' memories are in the bone marrow in there, or just get a sense of your heart, that heart energy center, and picture that there's sort of a chemical soup in there that holds your ancestors' memories. Get quiet, see if you can, kind of keep everybody from needing something for a while, and then align with whatever it is you believe in and ask to connect to any memories or any ancestors that might be impacting you. And you might get pictures in your head or a voice that talks or some sort of dream-like kind of photography that unfolds, or film strip or audio-visual track, or you might just get a feeling or a sense and just trust it. You may not even get anything when you're doing this, and then just give permission for information to come to you, say over the next 24 hours. So you could get an actual dream at night, or see a billboard that just goes, whoa, wagon wheels. And you go, oh, we had pioneers in the family. Something happened with the pioneers, or whatever it is. Just pay attention to it, because you don't want to just understand it. I believe we can send healing back in time. I mean, quantum physics says there's not really time and space. It's all really sort of mulched together. So if you just imagine yourself sending healing back to the ancestors, like visualize beautiful light or goodness, or ask what you believe in to help the souls of your ancestors. If you think of it, you help heal them. It comes forward and it helps heal you and your progeny as well. So I just say, well, let's find out. I mean, have that sense of adventure. Like, it's encoded in me. It's Memorex. I can get a sense of this. I can get the image. I can get a picture. I can get a piece of knowledge and go for it.
I love that, because it really does open all this wonder and curiosity. Then you're like, okay, well, wait a minute. Let's really start diving into the possibilities of what this could be, because when you do that, I think it opens up just a world of limitless possibilities for also releasing it.
For releasing it and doing a lot of other stuff. For instance, I worked with a client earlier today who has really innate intuitive gifts, healing gifts, visual gifts. She doesn't know how to develop it. She doesn't have enough money to take a lot of classes. And so we just paused, took a time out of the here and now, and asked if there was an ancestor back in time who would connect with her, kind of come future forward, connect with her and train her. And she actually got some woman from maybe 1,000 years ago who was a bruja, a beautiful medicine woman in her tradition, who stepped forward, and my client could see her, talk to her, who said, I'll train you. And I know this can be sort of weird sounding stuff for a lot of people, but quantum physics keeps sharing and proving we're just, every single time zone interacts. And there's this really cool theory called loop quantum gravity. And I hope I'm putting the words in the right place, because there are 3 words: loop, gravity, quantum, whatever it is. But I think it's loop quantum gravity. And it suggests that space and memories are in these sort of domes or igloos. And whenever we go through something, or somebody goes through something, that's sort of kept preserved in just picture these little igloos. And time is like these little rods that interconnect the igloos. So we have all our memories in these little igloos, and they're connected by these rods of time, but our ancestors have that too. And we interact with their igloos and rods of time. So in a weird way, we can interact with almost anything or anyone anywhere. It's more of a matter of intention and being clear that we can do this and wanting to do it safely that helps us get information. And like we're saying, that means you can also clear issues up.
In your book, you talk about original energetic signature. What is that? And how does that relate to each of us?
I know, isn't that a mouthful? Original energetic
signature. I know, really, right? You heard me stumble on that one.
I know. I have to say it really slow. So I'm just going to call it the original signature. Okay, because it's so long. And it doesn't really work as an acronym. So I believe that before we're born and when we're born, there's this signature, this set of codes that describes who we really are. And it has the clarity of our true self from our soul, which is a part of us that travels through time and has all these experiences to learn about love. It connects with our mind, with just this sort of bigger mind that we are, that holds truths. And it contains signatures in relation to our body. And I mean real signatures, like what are the genetics that should be activated so we can be healthiest? What type of neurotransmitters need to be firing, and how do they need to be firing in our body so that we have emotions or feelings that really help us be who we are and interact in a healthy way with the world? So all of that, because it's too complicated to figure it all out, I just call the original energetic signature, or the original signature. And it includes the chakras and your subtle energy system. And here's why that's important, because when we go through something in life that doesn't match our signature, all right, when somebody says something mean to us and it's not true, but we sort of float toward the lie, we have to embrace it to survive our family, or we just get compelled to adapt to it, because otherwise it's sort of a survival mechanism to adapt to stuff, even if it's not right for us. when we have a lot of energies that don't match who we really are or our signature, that gap, like let's say we really shouldn't be drinking alcohol. It's not good for us. Or let's say ice cream's really not good for us, but grapes are. But all this stuff happens where we keep it over adapting. The difference between what we're acting like, or what we sort of believe we deserve to be treated like by people, or the kind of work we're doing, the gap between what's in our life and who we really are, that is a gap. And that gap is where we need to build bridges and get closer to our real self, because in that gap is where we're going to get sick. In that gap, we're going to get microbes. We're going to get emotions that aren't ours. We're going to hold beliefs that aren't true. We're going to maybe adapt to religions or spiritualities that don't explain ourselves to ourselves in a loving way. So it's a gap that's the problem.
I love that you broke that down, and it makes so much sense, because you look at that, it's like, of course, this is how this all interrelates.
I know. And you know how I learned that? There's a man Dr. Michael Scoggins, who's incredibly brilliant. I understand an eighth of what he says. Okay. No, he's so smart. He has like 18 advanced degrees. And he actually talks about what's happening on the planet Earth as about gaps. He said nature's supposed to run at certain frequencies, right? So think of nature like however the animals are and the birds are, and the frequencies of the soil are supposed to be, and how we get the cosmic radiation, all this complicated stuff. But there's a signature that keeps the earth healthy. And here comes humans, and we're doing stuff that doesn't match the signature. So everything we do that's polluting, whether it be air pollution or EMF or whatever it is we're doing, even maybe toxic emotions. So what we're doing to the earth, there's a gap between what keeps the earth healthy and what we're doing to the earth. That's where we get climatic problems. That's what sets up for increased storms and tornadoes and this, erosion and the kind of stuff, the, Arctic melting. So I think we can even apply it to the earth right now, that we're all healthier if we live closer to the original signature. If we figure out what that is and we listen to it and walk with it.
So we've covered so much already. If someone's looking to do a personal assessment and, try to determine where they're going energetically and how to uncover what's happening with them, what would some tips be for them to kind of do that throughout their day?
That's a great question. And there's a few tips in the book, Energy Healing for Trauma, ... But I think you want to start your day in touch with yourself, because let's not just go looking for negatives, right? If you're in touch with this original self, with your real self, it's so much easier to say, yeah, this lunch selection fits me. This lunch selection doesn't. Or somebody comes up to you and goes, you did this wrong. Let me see how that feels. Let me measure their tone or their message against who I really am. Maybe a little bit fits, but maybe you don't have to swallow all of that. So I usually get in touch with my own essential self in my heart area. There's a lot of reasons for that. We have subtle energy centers called chakras, and these process physical and subtle energies. So they're spiritual and physical energies. And this is the strongest center that holds those. The heart, the physical heart, actually also emanates the strongest electromagnetic field, by far stronger than the brain. And the heart responds to positivity. So if you're in touch with your real self, and you appreciate yourself and you love yourself and you're gauging decisions based on your true essence, then you're making decisions that are going to support the physical heart, the electrical heart, the chakras. Your physical health and emotional health actually provably going to be healthier. So get up, breathe into your heart center, under the sternum, under the breastbone, and just stay there until you go, yeah, this is me. I feel me, and feel that me energy all the way down through your body, all the way up through your body. I call it the spirit. You can call it what you want, all the way around you. And then, maybe every hour or a couple hours, retool, go back to that center, get in touch with it, keep connected to that, and make your decisions based on it. And, we're all going to slip, right? So go to the bathroom, leave work, go to the bathroom, or these days, you might be working at home, right? Just flip off your Zoom camera if you can get by with it, right? Take a few deep breaths, jump up and down, do whatever you need to do. Have a piece of poetry near you that describes you to yourself, or a color that makes you feel good. Get some touchstone so you can go back to the self to see what fits and what doesn't.
So I know you did a lot of case studies throughout this book, and I'd love for you to share one or two with us, and just so our listeners can understand how this journey progressed.
Yeah, I did some significant ones. One was actually really complicated. It was about a woman who, when she visited with me, I called her Mary, who had so many different issues. She wasn't happy in her marriage. She had autoimmune disorders. She was estranged from her daughter. She had thyroid problems. The list kind of goes on and on and on about what she was dealing with. And so it was complicated to work with her because we actually had to track all the way back to events in a past life that made her feel like she wasn't worth anything and that she wasn't supposed to use her gifts or her abilities, and actually created trauma in the body in the past life that reappeared in the body today. Then she had trauma in the womb with her mother who rejected her. And that locked into the body too. And she started taking on her mother's negative emotions, which set her up for kind of a depressive anxiety sort of disorder. And then, just a rejecting father, a husband who was a little bit like that. She loved her job, but she didn't really think she should love her job. A disorder that got sent into her daughter because we exchange energies, and then she didn't connect to her daughter. She actually almost died in childbirth. So I'm just giving really broad strokes to point to how many moments in time we can go through something and carry it with us. She did heal. She healed from a lot of her autoimmune issues. Autoimmune issues are more complicated than sort of simple traumas like 1 microbe rather than 8 microbes or whatever it is. Because after a while, trauma is injury outside to in. After a while, we start to attack ourselves. That's what autoimmune disorders are really described as. And we start to beat ourselves up emotionally, and our own immune system starts to beat ourselves up. So then we have to track trauma, but also treat ourselves better as well. And it took a long time, but she really re-energized herself and ended up happy in her job, happier with her daughter, even more functional, between her and her husband, because she spoke her mind. But that took a while. And I want people to know, if we've spent a lot of time building up issues, it can take a while to unwind them, but we're worth it. Some issues go really quick. Kids especially clear really quickly. I'll give you an interesting story. It's not in the book, but about a little girl. I had a mom call me. She said, "Can you work with my daughter?" I said, "Yes." And she goes, "Can I be in the room?" And her daughter was young, like 8 or 9. And I said, "It's better if you are." And she said, "My daughter feels really bad about herself." I said, "Okay, we'll work with that." So first the mom gets on the phone and the daughter's there. And I said, "Will you send your daughter out of the room for a minute? Because I just have this intuition." This was about the mom toward the daughter. And I said, just bluntly, because I got images, I sent to the mom, "Do you yell at your daughter a lot?" She goes, "Yeah, I do." And I go, "So does the daughter go to school and get yelled at a lot?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "So do you think we can work on your issue first? Like how you feel so bad about yourself, you yell at your daughter?" we kind of cleared it up in half an hour. Then we got the daughter on the phone, and the mom was there, and the mom said, you can tell the nice woman that I've yelled at you and that it makes you feel bad. So the daughter talked it through in like 10 or 15 minutes, because kids are so freaking resilient, aren't they? She was like, I know my mommy feels bad about herself. I don't want her to. So, mommy, you're okay. So I'm not going to feel bad about myself anymore. So I'm going to tell these nasty girls to stop it and just go play with other people. All of that was an hour.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I was exhausted, not in a bad way, but in a happy way. Like, wow, we just changed the whole family system. Isn't that cool? So I think when people really want to change, whether it's going to take them a couple years or a short amount of time, go for it, because it impacts not just you, but your loved ones too.
Well, it's interesting because you look at that and go, okay, well, how long has that mother been carrying that she's using that on her children, the way that she speaks, and so it's healing that heals the entire family,
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to get a sense of that interconnectedness. And some people, I don't know if they're going to heal what's there. I had another mom years ago call me, and she was just really mad at the school. I mean, we've gone through these horrible stages in America, especially with school shootings. And it was shortly after a couple of those, and her school insisted that no matter who came in to pick up their kids, they were elementary and little kids, like pre-kindergarten and kindergarten and elementary, that they had to show their IDs. There you are. That's really smart. So this mom was suing the school for making her show her ID because she knew they knew her. And I said, what are you really so mad about? Because this seems pretty logical. She goes, well, she went on and on. I said, well, what happened to you? How old is your daughter? She goes, 4. I said, what happened to you when you were 4? And she goes, well, I was raped. And she talked about it a little bit. She said, I've never told anybody else. And I said, will you tell somebody besides me? And she said, I'll think about it. And she hung up the phone. I don't know if she ever did, to be honest. I don't know if she got help. I don't know. There's big question marks. I hope that it helped her rethink maybe any attitudes toward the school or her daughter and toward herself. So there is this place, though, where you uncover truth. Then I think you have to be brave enough to go with the truth until you transform into, letting the truth be what sets you free instead of what might be imprisoning you too.
Well, it's coming to those realizations that, you may have something that parallels something that happened in your past life that's actually paralleling what's happening today. Really taking a look at that and addressing it and dealing with that, because a lot of times people stuff things. They are really good at stuffing things. And when it comes up, they're like, well, I don't know what this is all about. And there could be very good reasons why it's there.
Exactly. And a lot of times we don't know. And, then we do a deep dive, or we let our dreams speak to us, or we talk to a friend or a therapist, or we just get willing. We search and we get willing. Sometimes it's sort of odd. I remember that when was I? Maybe 25 or 30. I started to have dreams and memories that weren't mine. I thought they were my sister's. I have a sister who's a year younger. And suddenly in my dreams at night, I would imagine that I was my sister going through her day in elementary school. And I'm like, I think I hold her memories, which is another odd spin, isn't it, when you work with subtle energy? So I called her, because we get along and did get along. And I said, would you mind if I tell you what my dreams are? Because I think they're actually yours. And I think I've been carrying them. And she goes, that would be really helpful, because I'm in therapy and I can't get my memories. I don't remember anything. So I'm not saying that happens that often. I was sort of a strange kid. Some of us are more like energy sponges, and we pick up for everybody else too. We clean everybody's houses, not just our own. But I think as long as we're willing, what we need can be remembered or be brought back to us.
In your book, you talk about aligning with our spirit guides. And for people that might be new to this, why is that important? And is this something that's really simple to do, or does it take time to really develop?
I think it's a yes to both questions. It is really simple. And I think it can take time for people to trust that they have guides, especially if you grow up in a family where you couldn't even trust that your family members were there for you, right? Because they sort of weren't. It can take a little time to believe that invisible beings are there for you. I absolutely, completely believe we have spiritual guides. And some of them might be masters or angels or deceased relatives or beings we knew in a past life, or they can be pets we had when we were a kid too. I have, or power animals, beings that show themselves as if they're birds or animals or reptiles or whatever. And I love this notion because I thought it was true as a child, and I even now think it's more true. So you want to connect with them because 99.99% of our energy is spiritual. It's subtle, which means that most of our relationships are probably with the subtle realms and worlds. So why not get them to work for you? Why not ask your invisible helpers to be on your help committee, to give you advice, to help you, to warn you, to give you signs? And I live like that constantly. Yeah, there's a cool story about how real that can be. I have a friend named Mark, and his father died, and he came over with his wife, and my boyfriend at the time was here because he wanted to connect with his father. He felt like his father was around him and trying to guide him, but he couldn't quite connect with him. His dad had been dead maybe, I don't know, a few months or something. So we went in this little office I have, and we're doing this sort of spooky, like we have a candle lit, and it's dim and dark, and we're asking his father to connect, and Mark just jerks up and he goes, "My father's here. I can feel him." And he goes, "My father's telling me I have a lot of guides that want to help me." And Mark's a business guy. He's not woo-woo, right? And he can sense all these different beings. It's a very little room, and there's a lot of beings smashed in it. And his father said, "We want to give you proof that we are real. And hold out your hand." So Mark held out his hands, and we're only lit by candles. He holds out his hand, and his father to Mark's head, inside of Mark's head, says, "So we're going to make something concrete." And all of a sudden, I can see this golden ball, like a bowl of energy in Mark's hand. I can see it with my eyes, and Mark can see it. Mark's wife just sees white light. The guy I was dating saw nothing. We broke up shortly after that because, okay, whatever. But
I see there's good reason for that, right?
Yeah, there were many reasons, and that amongst them. Like, come on, I'm not crazy. So, but it was solid. It was real. So in that moment, like, Mark was shown, there's real beings here loving you and helping you. And at least 3 out of the 4 of us believed it. And we probably believed it before, but that concrete made it even more real. So I don't know about you, but I need all the help I can get. I mean,
I'm all for that.
I know. I know. Especially when the world is so in upheaval. Like, there's beings who can help you. They can even help you figure out, should you go to this grocery store or not? Or might you want to avoid this or do this? And I mean, nothing's too big or small for our committee of helpers. So they make me, now they're not going to take care of everything. I have people who will say to me, "Well, how come how come they're not telling me if this guy's going to marry me or not, or if I'm going to get this job?" And it's like, while you're alive, you have to live it. They'll help you on an as need to know basis. You just have to keep walking. Also, you can sit and rest, but you have to keep walking. But they're there to negotiate and help and heal. So align with them. Ask them to help you. Ask for signs. I'm very Norwegian. I'm very stubborn. I tell my guys, if you have to get me a message, get it through my thick skull so I know it's real. And I leave it to them because sometimes I'm just not going to notice stuff.
Well, it's good that you are asking for them to give you specific, like, hey, you have to make it really obvious or make sure I get the sign. Because I think a lot of times people will just kind of go, oh, it could be whatever. And they leave it so loose that if something does come, they don't even know what they're getting.
No, ask for specifics. Like if you want something concrete, ask for that. If you want a vision, ask for that. I usually leave it open and then I give a time frame. I like 3 days. I might say within 3 days, I want signs that help me make this decision and they need to be clear. This worked really well a few years ago. We had a dog named Honey, a male golden retriever. My son Gabe and I had him. In deference to Gabe's father, we were divorced, but his father had a male golden retriever named Honey. So we got a male golden retriever named Honey. So that Honey died. And then he was a very busy, talkative, he was just an exhausting dog. So I got a different dog and all was well until I woke up one morning and I heard this voice saying, I'm back. 3 years later, after Honey died. And you know what? I knew it was Honey. I knew it was Honey the dog. And I was like, please, I don't want you. I can't do this. I'm a single mom. I'm just tired. I can't do this. That very morning, Gabe came into my room. This was 7-8 years ago. And he said, Mom, I felt like I was supposed to Google for a new golden retriever. And I found one. He had, right, that morning. There was a little golden named Tank in Pennsylvania. Now tell me how that's Honey. So I said, I need a sign that this Tank puppy is Honey. Everywhere Gabe and I went for a week, I gave it a week. We saw Sherman tanks, G.I. Joe tanks, toilet tanks on billboards. And I had Honey delivered to my house from Amazon. I'd never ordered. And I still wasn't wanting to be convinced. So I'm seeing my therapist in a building that's a non-dog building. And I'm leaving her office and I'm going, I just need one more sign and then I'll pull it. I'll get this dog. I'll get this Tank dog. I walk out into the hallway and there's a dog without an owner carrying a leash that came right up to me. I thought, okay.
You can't make that stuff up,
So Honey the dog, Honey the third Honey the dog male retriever is back. He's 7 years old. He's the same darn dog. I know it. And I adore him. I'm so glad he's back. We get along so much better this time because my heart's more open to him.
Well, do you know it? And it's interesting when we have pets, they really take us to different places with each experience that we have with them. So while we have one pet, Honey 1 or Honey 2, by the time we have Honey 3, we've learned a lot.
That's right. He's a barking dog. He talks. Literally, he had surgery for 2.5 hours when he was little in the same area that had afflicted him unto death when he was Honey the 2 in the mouth area. The vet said he talked the whole time. So you know why that's important is because I can't bring him to the dog park with Lucky the lab because he'll just bark at all the people. He's talking to them. I have to go at 4:30 in the morning so that it's, a decent enough time so the dogs that are there know him and the owners don't care that he barks. So he makes me exercise every morning. So there's a reason for everything. I mean, that's it. I have to stay healthy for Honey Golden.
Yeah, it sounds like he has a master plan.
Well, somebody does, and I'm on the either losing or winning side of it.
Well, I think I have time for one more question here. In your book, you talk about creating a safe healing space. Why would we do that? And is that something that people can do regardless what position they're in, maybe physically or mentally?
Oh, absolutely. Well, if we've been traumatized, and almost all of us have been, that leaves us shaken. We don't feel safe, maybe in our body or maybe even in the homes we grew up in or in our own homes. So in order to receive guidance, in order to feel safe enough to heal, in order to talk well to ourselves, whatever it is that we need to create a haven. We need to create a safe space. You can live in a studio apartment and create a safe little corner. It's like pretend you're a kid again. I mean, I collected treasures when I was a kid. I had buttons and turtle shells and whatever it is that speaks to you, religious icons. You can just set up a corner that you can sit in or near, or a whole room, depending on how big and expansive your world is, or go outside unless you're in Minnesota like I am and it's too cold. You can't go out there most of the year. But create a physical space that when you're there, you know your guides are there. You can be good with yourself. You can check in. You can do your work and do your peacemaking. If you don't feel attracted to creating a physical space or you travel a lot, you can bring a couple of your icons with you if you travel a lot and set them up in a hotel room. Set it up in your mind. Like make a space. Like when I was a teenager, I used to go to the Boundary Waters up in northern Minnesota a lot. My safe space is up on an island in the Boundary Waters. So if I need to be safe or tune in, I create that imaging within myself and I'm there and I'm safe.
I love that. You know, I've got my safe place too, and it's in Hawaii.
Oh, I'm jealous.
It's nice to have these places that we really spiritually connect to and feel like, gosh, okay, this is a place where I can be and really be not just safe, but being able to like really unload things that we need to get rid of.
Exactly. And it's our space. Even if it's physical, like I said, take a picture of it and look at it on your phone or whatever it is that will bring you into that remembrance of security.
So, Cyndi, where can our listeners connect with you and learn about your book, Energy Healing for Trauma, Stress, and Chronic Illness, and about your other books as well? Because I know you have got some great information out there.
Thank you. The easiest is my website. It's cindydale.com, spelled weird, CYNDI Dale.com. And really pretty much everything's on or can be linked to through my website.
Well, Cyndi, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
It's all my pleasure. Thank you. And stay safe and well.
Well, thank you, Cyndi. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Energy Healing for Trauma, Stress, and Chronic Illness. Energy Healing is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And if you don't see it on the shelf, ask for them to order it. And of course, it's available on Kindle. Again, if you'd like to connect with Cyndi, you can at her website, cindydale.com, for more information. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.